Hello and welcome to Inside Music, episode number 112. I'm your host, James Shotwell, and it's great to be with you. Although I have to say that it comes on a heavy day. It is currently Thursday, July 20th, and just hours ago the news broke that Chester Bennington, frontman for the group Linkin Park, chose to take his own life this morning at the age of 41, leaving behind 6 kids. And I've got to tell you, it hit me hard. I'm sure it hit many of you hard, and if you're just now hearing the news, I apologize for being the one to break it to you, but like many of you out there, I grew up listening to Linkin Park, and ever since I read the headline, my mind has been racing with memories of friends and family that I share based around the music of Linkin Park. And I never got a chance to meet Chester, but I always felt a connection to him because of the music and his willingness to share his struggle. And the fact that he was able to connect with so many people about that struggle that he fought his entire life and still lost the battle ultimately. It's a crushing blow, you know? I feel like most forms of artistic expression are the creator's way of trying to get the demons out of their head and onto the page in front of them, in whatever shape that may take. And you hope as a creative person that if you can just do that, if you can just get them out of your head and in front of you, that then you can find a way to work through them and battle them and hopefully, ultimately, defeat them. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case today. While all that was happening and unfolding and I'm reading the headlines, I remembered that it was still the middle of the workday and I had already scheduled an interview with Stephen Christian, formerly of the band Anberlin, to discuss his upcoming solo album. I remember that Stephen and Linkin Park had actually toured in the past together, and so when I got him on the phone, it was the very first thing either one of us wanted to talk about. Well, I shouldn't say that we wanted to talk about it. We would probably have preferred to talk about literally anything else, but given the events of the day and the newness of the situation, we couldn't help talking about it. And Stephen told me about his time with Linkin Park, and he told me also about the struggles he himself has faced, and I got into mine a little bit as well. If any of you listen to the episodes of the Not Quite podcast that we have run on this feed, you'll know that I've battled depression and suicide and all of that, and I know many of you have as well because you've reached out to me. Well, Stephen's no different. He has struggles of his own, and we talk about those things. We bring him out into the open, and we use that as a way to transition into a discussion about his new album ultimately. And I don't want you to think that that's a promotional thing, because it's not. Stephen did not know what his life was going to be when he left Anberlin. He was suddenly no longer the guy in front of the band, in front of the people. He was somebody else, and he had to figure out that person. And it's taken him years to get to this point where he is releasing an album under the name Stephen Christian, an album that, even in his own words, he never really thought he would be releasing right now. He did a little bit of soul searching, a lot of self-discovery, and this is the result of that. And I'm going to tell you off the top, it's a worship album. Stephen is a fiercely Christian man, no pun intended with his last name, and this record is something of a second coming for the alternative Christian music genre. These are worship songs, but there's a personal touch. There's a personal touch that is undeniably Stephen, and I think even non-believers who have enjoyed his work in the past will find something to appreciate on this record. Anyways, I don't want to talk promotion. I do need to tell you that this episode of Inside Music is brought to you by Holix, the music industry's leading digital promotional platform, and we help record labels and independent artists share new and unreleased music without fear of piracy. You can get a free 30-day trial by visiting Holix.com, Haulix.com. But even more importantly than that today, I want to ask you to get help. I want to ask you to not remain silent. I can't tell you what was happening with Chester Bennington, but I know that his art was a way for him to stop being in his own head. And I implore all of you to get out of your head and talk to somebody. Even if you are unable to talk about the struggles that you're facing or the feelings that you have, talk about Chester, talk about his music, talk about the weather. Just call somebody that you care about and let them know how you're doing. And maybe, just maybe, you'll learn that they too have struggles and they were hoping that somebody would call them. If you don't feel like you have anyone to call, you can call me. You can reach out to me. It's at Inside Music Pod on Twitter, at James D. Shotwell on Twitter, james@Haulix.com. I'll give you my phone number if you need it. Or there are suicide helplines. There are just lines that you can call to just talk to people. There are bands. There are so many people who would love to talk to you. If you feel alone, if you feel scared, if you feel like all of this is just too much to bear, please reach out and get help. Now I'm going to play you a little bit of music from Stephen's new album, the lead single, Gloria, and then we're going to get into the conversation. I want to tell you that Wildfires, Stephen's debut album, arrives on July 28th, and it is a record that is chock full of hope. Even if you're not a Christian yourself, this is an album meant to inspire, to remind you of the power of hope, and that even when things are at their darkest, Even when you don't feel like you could take another step in the life that you are currently living, there is reason to move forward. There is a reason to keep breathing. There is a reason to keep waking up every single day. And I promise you there are people out there who want to see you do that. So please take care of yourselves and enjoy this conversation. Have a great day.
God is infinite, beyond imagination. He is beautiful, just look at his creation. Majestic, we lift up his name together. Majesty, will sing out his praise forever. Lift up your voice and sing before the rocks cry. Lift up your hands to the world in worship. Shout at the top of your lungs, Gloria. Lift up your hearts as one. Come on and praise him. Lift up your eyes, behold the King. Everything that has breath, sing Gloria. Who can stand against
Right.
our rock, our foundation?
How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
Good. Life's good right now. Pretty fun.
Yeah, it's been a day. It's been a day. But I guess I got to start with like the big news of the day.
O.J. Simpson?
Not the OJ thing, the Chester thing. Chester from
Yeah.
Linkin Park.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. You know, we actually got a chance to tour with Linkin Park. I think what the biggest lesson is, you know, a lot of people are going to just ask why. You know, they're going to look for reasons about, you know, why he would have done this. I know some people speculate he was good friends with Chris Cornell. Could have been, you know, copycat situation. It could have been a number of things. But to be honest, like, I don't think you're ever going to know why, because you can never get into his brain. But I think, like I mentioned somewhere recently just online, is just, you know, what can we learn from this? And the fact of the matter is, like, I think so many people ascribe to fame and notoriety, and they think that that's going to resolve or fulfill them in a way that that they are lacking. Even money, success, power, all these things Chester had. And so at the end of the day, it didn't make him happy. Or he began to isolate himself. He began to like stop telling people his problems, and he began internally hurting and mulling this all over. And I guess the lesson is, you know, number one, nothing in this world is going to satisfy. You know, nothing is going to like make you fulfilled. You know, happiness is not contingent on, you know, accomplishing some colossal goal, because it's just not. Secondly, I think is just the fact that, like, we cannot as humans isolate ourselves. So if you're going through depression, or you're hurting, or you're lonely, or these thoughts begin to creep in, you've got to go tell somebody. You have to talk about it. You can't sit there and go, oh, they're not going to love me. Oh, you know, what will people think of me if they know that I'm depressed or hurting? Man, I'm telling you what, everybody is hurting. Everybody has had thoughts of suicide before, or at least kind of, you know, I wonder if, you know, if I wasn't alive. You know, it's just, we all go through it. To be honest, in May, this year, I went through like a month long where I was just kind of like out of it. I just felt like so empty and dissatisfied, and I couldn't shake it. And finally I had to go talk to somebody. I was just like, this is just getting ridiculous. And I just think that all of us are susceptible to depression, to hurt, to pain. And so when you begin to isolate yourself, and when you begin to get alone with your own thoughts, your heart will betray you. And this is that kind of case where, you know, again, I do not have any facts whatsoever.
Exactly.
But, you know, it looks like a suicide, you know, and that's what people are surmising. And if that's truly the case, you know, he obviously didn't get help somewhere. And I just, you know, would reiterate, please go talk to people. Please go get help. You are not alone in this. And yeah, there's going to be help, and there's going to be hope out there.
I feel like this is a good segue into talking about the record because Gloria, in particular, seems like a song that's almost born from these kind of struggles.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a really, really tough time of my life. That was, that was written in end of 2014, early 2015, right around that era, to where, it was, I was out of Anberlin, and that was a tough time in my life because, again, a lot of people in bands, like, especially if you've been around for over 5 years, I would highly suggest going to like a counselor or a psychologist when you get out, because I think a lot of who you are, whether you want it to or not, a lot of your identity is entwined with, your name and then from the band name. So Steven from Anberlin. And then you begin to hear that and that's your identity. You know what I'm saying? Like, as funny as it sounds, like tons of people are on my phone by their first name and their band name. And the fact of the matter is, you slowly, those two identities begin to merge. Who you are on the stage and off the stage, they begin to merge together, and suddenly you can't break them apart. So I know men, and I don't mean boys, I mean men who got out of the band and fell apart psychologically, who just dropped off the face of the earth, who abandoned their friends, who lost it. And it's a tough life. It's a tough road. And I think, again, none of us are immune to mental challenges. And there, again, there's help out there. There's hope out there. But for me, that's the song Gloria came out of that time. It was a song basically that there is something larger than me out there. And I believe it's God, and I know it to be God in my life. And, that kind of just singing about how he's bigger than my concerns, he's bigger than my problems, was a type of therapy for me, including the songs Trust. And I think that, again, that's another one where it's just kind of like, I have no clue about tomorrow. There was this, again, to tie this in with Chester, there was a time in my life where I was so stressed out I wasn't sleeping. And I would wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and my hands would be so clenched, so hurting so bad because I was so stressed out in my sleep. I was grinding my teeth and clenching my fists so hard I didn't have any blood in my hands, basically. And that's why my hands were hurting, the doctor said, when I would wake up. And, it's one of those things that I fully trust. And I had to, and I still do have to trust in Jesus Christ. And without that, I just don't know. It would have been a much harder road to get out of that type of stress and anxiety. And I don't want to call it depression because I feel like that would take away from the day, but that kind of stress and anxiety level in my personal life.
Well, I've been in music for a while now myself, and I interviewed you when you were in Anberlin a bunch of times, and the older I get, now that I'm like into my 30s too, I start thinking about how few people I know that are still in music that were working in music 10 years ago. And I'm sure that's for you too. Like, you've toured with all these bands and people, and like you just said, like things move on. So for you, was it like, I'm always going to be in music? Like, was this the only home for you? Like, when Anberlin was done, did you know that you were going to come back and do something else?
No way. I tried to avoid it like a bad plague. Like right away, when Word Records was like, "Hey, you should release a record. We'll put it out." And I was like, "Nope." Even it was so funny. Like 3 months after getting out of Anberlin, my wife and I were sitting in a gas station that the bus would usually drop me off in Nashville, and we were sitting there pumping up gas, and both of us were like almost shaking, like, "Get us out of here. We do not. I do not want to see a bus as long as I live." So it was one of those things that I honestly was like ready to run as far away as I possibly could. And that's why it's taken me 2 years to put it out. It's just, it took the label convincing me to put something out. It took my wife convincing me that like, it's okay, like go for it. It was a hard process to get back into it. So no, I had no clue. I really thought like I was going to run from music. There was, just a lot of like ghosts in the past of music where I was just trying to avoid them at all costs. And now in the last, like, I would say 3 months, the reality of kind of touring again has kind of seeped in, like, okay, I think I could do it. I think I could I could go play some festivals, some conferences, I could go out there and do something, and I think my wife would say the same thing. Like, okay, I think we're to a healthy homeostasis in our marriage and in life and in family life, and that I think I have my priorities finally sifted out to be where they should have been years ago. So yeah, to answer your question, no, I never thought I would be in music again. I thought what I would do is kind of do Anchor and Braille where I don't have to like actually surface. I could, record on a computer hidden away in a small house somewhere, but not to this magnitude.
That's a good answer. I was going to ask you because I'm kind of obsessed with the Christian music world. Forgive the ringing phone in the background.
Oh, no worries.
I grew up in the Christian music market, and that was kind of my bread and butter my whole life. It's where I started playing music too. So I always kind of noticed that Anberlin really came up when that market had like a peak right there before 2000, and that whole scene that used to exist where I felt like there was a whole Christian music genre kind of moved away. And when I heard Wildflowers for the first time, it was almost like I was like, oh, he's gonna bring it back. He's like I felt like it was the kind of album I hadn't heard in a while, especially from somebody that I guess has a platform that you have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've interviewed a lot of those guys because I'm obsessed with that time, and every time I'm like, what happened? Like, where did that world go? And they're like, it just got smaller, or it kind of got mixed into everything else. But then you hear this album, and it's like, but it doesn't have to be. You could still just release a straight up alternative Christian album.
Absolutely. It wasn't like this was all by design. It wasn't like I looked in the Christian music industry and I was like, what's going to sell? This is going to be awesome.
Yes.
If I wanted to like keep selling records and keep touring, I would just resurface Anberlin, but I don't want to do it. I want to do music on my terms. And I know that sounds super selfish, but maybe it is. I've kind of prioritized in my life. It's God first and then my family second. And for far too long, it went, God, and then Anberlin, and then, whatever Anberlin needed, then Anberlin, and then, oh yeah, I have some daughters and a wife, So I feel like on this where I've kind of refocused and recalibrated, this was kind of the music that surfaced in my life. I didn't seek it out, as cliche as it sounds. I feel like this record kind of sought me out in the fact that 2014 hit. I knew that I was quitting the band. I approached, Word Records approached me and just said, hey, would you want to write for us? And I said, absolutely. So they were putting me together with like pop artists. I did some hip hop stuff. I did some country stuff. I did jingles for Target. I did a whole bunch of assortment of stuff just to kind of, for me, it was a way to maintain a creative outlet, because I'm a big firm believer in, like, with creativity, if you don't continue to perpetuate it, if you don't keep it going, if you don't kind of keep working out that muscle, it's just going to vanish. And so then when they would set me up on these worship rights, it was like my heart palpitated. It was like, I can't explain it, but it was kind of like, man, I don't know if you've ever had this happen before, but where you'll sing a melody line or you'll play a chord on a piano and almost like you start tearing up. I don't know what that's called. I don't even know if there's a technical name for it, but it happens really early on in your career. It's like a reverberation of music in your soul. I don't know if there's a technical word for it. Either way, I started to notice, like, man, like, I feel these songs. It's not a jingle for Target. It's not a country song about, my pickup truck that I don't relate with. This is a reverberation of, like, my creativity. I don't know, man, that sounds so existential, and I don't mean for it to be.
No, you're right. I get it.
So I went to Joel and I just said, hey, Joel, don't ask again if you want to set me up on a worship right. Whoever's interested in writing worship songs with me, just hook it up, just set it up. Let's go. Let's do this. And so that's what happened. Like, I started to write these songs, and suddenly it was like, oh man, I was about to say what, like a wildfire. It was like just something caught on. Like, I got it. Like, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to put out this record. So. I've been approached by other people to, like, sing for their band or go write this certain genre of music or start a band like this. And honestly, the only one that has caught my attention is Wildfires. So yeah, that's almost the inception of the record in its complete formation.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I gotta ask, what did the wife say the first time that you were like, I think I'm gonna write these songs for myself. Like, I think I'm gonna. This is. I know you said that she encouraged you to get out to start working on an album, but when you really were like, I think I'm doing it again. I think it's happening again.
Yeah. No, she was ecstatic. She was just like, absolutely. She was right off the bat. It's hard to say, but she was never upset at me being a part of a band. That wasn't the whole thing. It was just the fact that like we would tour 7, 8, 9 months a year, man. Like, so it was not that I was touring. It was the amount of touring, and when I would tour. Like when my second daughter was born, I was in a bus within 2 weeks of her being born. Like, that's crazy. So I missed first words and first steps and first smiles. So she was never upset at like Anberlin. It was just more like, you're missing out on real life, right? Like actual quality life. You're missing out on. You're calling the success by saying, I'm making money, I'm traveling the world, I'm writing music, but at the end of the day, maybe what you define as success is all wrong. And it was just kind of like, yeah, she's absolutely right. No amount of gold records are gonna be by my bedside on my deathbed. No amount of people, of numbers of people singing along at your shows are going to equate to your daughter's first steps. It's true. It's just kind of like, man, I misprioritized, and that's on me. I made poor decisions to put others in my own band and the band itself in front of what was important. And I see that now, but back then, absolutely, Anberlin was a priority. But she's down. She's so down.
I'm sure there's a little bit of her that's like, maybe you could tour just a little bit, just a little bit of space. I'm used to it. She used to have all this time.
She would say, I'm down with you touring a little bit because I want to come and see. I want to go back to San Francisco.
That's a good way to look at it.
I miss Japanese food or tea in London. She would jump on that bus so fast.
Yeah, there's the balance. That's the balance. Well, that's great, man. And I was so surprised when I heard the record because I got it a while ago and I didn't even read anything about it. I saw your name and I clicked play and I got through like 3 songs before I was like, okay, so that's why I was like, oh, it brought me back to the late 90s, early 2000s, that peak of the Christian music movement. And I was like, I wonder what it's like to kind of go after this audience again, because Anberlin always kind of towed that line between the two, and now you're able to reintroduce yourself into this market that I think is kind of hungry for an album like this, especially one that at least upon release will have a lot of people that might give it a chance that wouldn't otherwise give the genre a chance, just because they'll be like, oh, it's Stephen from Christian or Stephen from Anberlin. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's awesome, and I think ironically, I attribute that a lot to as far as where the moniker of me getting it out under my own name to Aaron Marsh from Copeland, because actually Anger and Braille, I was just going to call it Stephen Christian. And he came to me one day when we were recording the first record, Felt, and was just kind of like, hey man, I feel like this is a lot of like local musicians, a lot of like people speaking into this record. It just feels like you should form a band. You should make this into a band project as opposed to like, this is me. And I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. So that's when I came up with Anchor and Braille. And then like years later, I was like, thank you, Aaron Marsh, because I really appreciate the fact that like, in my life, like, I definitely want to get back into rock music in some form or fashion, just because I love that raw energy. But I love at the end of the day when in 10 years, when my kids who are very young right now still, they could just go, Alexa, play Stephen Christian, and when Alexa comes on, it will be like, that's my record, that's who I am. This, at the end of the day, in Anberlin, in Anchor and Braille, in my life, in my day job, it all boils down to God. And I'm so happy that, it's just kind of coming out under my own project.
Now, I feel like in all of songwriting, worship writing has to be a little intimidating because there are the staples that people know, and those staples have been around before you and I were alive most of the time. So, like, when you're trying to write a worship song, like, can you talk to me a little bit about that process, like how you approach it, maybe that differs from the other projects, because it is a very specific genre of music.
I want to take it one step further and say that it's a sacred art form.
Very
You
much
know,
so.
I feel, and this is not a general populace form of thought currently, but I hope that it soon will be. Maybe it's me that will be the diatribe or into this, but I feel that when the Bible says to whom much is given, much is required, and with this form of music that God has given me or anyone that would call themselves a quote unquote worship leader, man, it's going to be a heavy judgment day, right? Because if we have to stand in front of God and we're accountable for what we do in our lives, to say like, I stood in front of people and I sang songs about you. The retort from God, I hope, is not, yeah, but at the end of the day that this was all about you. You wanted to be famous. You wanted to be rich. You wanted to sell songs. You wanted to make that church your footstool and kind of like as a stepping stone to something bigger. And I want to make sure that like as all the worship leaders out there understand that this is not your musical outlet. This is not your platform to become famous. This is a sacred art form that unless you feel called or unless like you know that in your heart of hearts you have no ulterior motives, man, stay out. Go be a CCM artist, go be a pop artist, go into, I don't know, hip hop, whatever you feel like, but get out, because that's not, I don't know. That's not like me trying to point fingers. That's saying like,
No, it's
if
true.
you truly believe that it's a sacred art form, if you truly believe that like for thousands of years, there has been musicians that have called out God's name and pointed as a conduit to God. And we kind of like the Bible would say like we help lead people into the throne room of God. Lord forbid you walk into the throne room of God pointing a finger at yourself saying, look at me. Just be very, very cautious, because man, it's just, even in the Old Testament, one of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not have any other, idols. Don't have idols. What if you are your own idol? I just suggest people search their own heart. For me, going to a church and trying a life of anonymity has been a step back. Like I'm trying to go back. Like I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be like, I don't want to be a quote unquote successful worship leader. I just want to be a good worship leader that's pleasing to the Lord. But anything else, as far as human terminology, is almost sacrilegious. And if you're trying to attempt to sell records by exchanging the word baby for Jesus, I would say you are towing the line of blasphemy.
I absolutely don't disagree with that. When I was listening to the album, I was thinking that, my dad has taught me this before, but he was like, most people don't know who wrote something like Shout to the Lord. It might be sung in like every church in America every Sunday, but most people can't tell you who wrote that song. And there are some people that stand out, Chris Tomlin and Michael W. Smith. There are some like modern worship writers, but even people that know their names don't necessarily know the songs they wrote. And I think that kind of goes back to what you're talking to. It's not just, you don't want the song to just be like, oh, this is Stephen Christian's version of worship. You're trying to write a worship song that everyone can connect to. It's a different type of songwriting altogether.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that's like, even though I tell stories, within this record, they're so ambiguous for the greater good, because I want to make sure not to cross the line between me and God. There is no line. It's all him.
So let me ask you this. For you, what makes Wildfires a success? Is it, I can't imagine that it has to do with the sales. Is it just people hearing it? Is it a feeling? Or is it already a success because you were able to kind of do this thing that is so different and so unique?
It's already a success, because to me, like, I don't know what I care about anymore. Like,
Yeah.
Do I care about a world tour? I mean, that'd be awesome. Like, it would be fun to take my family and see places they've never seen before. Is it numbers? I don't know. Like, I don't want to spout out numbers of my past, but it's just kind of like, I don't know. For me, like, I don't have a measure of success, because like, God has allowed me to accomplish everything I ever set out to do in my entire life, and then times that by like 20. When I was a kid and I was like dreaming of like, what if I was in a band, what would I want to do? Our big goals was to sell 15,000 records and to go to Georgia. Those were our two goals. And like we've so far superseded those that all of this just feels like just, man, just bonus time, like just so much fun. So I don't know. I don't have a, you know, I don't have anything. I have nothing. It's already a success to me because I'm just granted and allotted by my friends and my fans and family and, God himself to be able to do another record. And that is just, man, people would just give their left arm just to even record one record, let alone, as many as I have. So I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Have you had a chance to perform any of these for church or anyone in that kind of gathering? Have people been able to experience the songs in like a worship setting yet?
Yes. I just played Isotope Stadium July 2nd of this year, actually July 3rd. So I got to play there. That was like 12,000 people, and it was really cool to see the reaction. And then also at the church that I'm a worship director at, Calvary Albuquerque, we've played it there a few times as well. So it's gone over really well, and I'm just looking forward to see how other worship leaders are gonna, I would love for them to pick it up and just play it, kind of give it. I want to hear the interpretation of these songs, how somebody else interprets it. I think that's one thing that's so cool about this genre is just the accessibility to for other people to like take it and use it as their own. And again, just be a conduit, not be a lighthouse.
Yeah, Christian music doesn't have cover songs. It's just ubiquitous. Everyone has their version of that song.
Right. Absolutely. And I love it. I like it. We play cover songs every single weekend. There's nothing wrong with it. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I like that too, and I feel like that's what's kind of beautiful about this project to me, because it doesn't seem like I understand that your name's attached to it, but when you release an album that is a worship album like this, it's really more of a gift to the whole genre, where it's like, here's a collection of songs that maybe we can play with. Hopefully you like them, or at least one or two of them, and maybe someone else makes it better than you did.
I would love it, dude. Songs all day. And get out there and tour on it. So go for it. They can have it. They can go tour. That'd be great.
Oh man. So what's next then? So you're gonna get out there a little bit, shake it off?
Yeah, shake it off. That'd be fun. Yeah, I don't mind. I don't have anything lined up just currently, but it's just one of those things where I've been really, really focused on Calvary Albuquerque here in New Mexico. But my leadership's really cool about just kind of exploring the country. Now, my worship team at the church is called Battle Drums. We are in the final stages of kind of signing a record label, so that will be hopefully released this fall, if not like early spring. So that's exciting. There's just so much happening, man. It's so cool.
Well, I'm happy for you, man. I'm happy to see you back, and I don't want to put pressure on you by being like, oh, you're kind of championing this genre that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to anymore. But it made me very excited to see just an album that was like, you can't tell me this isn't just a Christian album, in a way. You know what I mean?
Man, thanks.
Because I feel like for so long there, it was like this weird gray area that people would toe for whatever reason. And then I hear this and I was like, no, he says Jesus in the first song. Like, we are going for it.
I'm going for it. I don't care. I mean, I don't know. And you know what? Anberlin fans, I would say 70% of all Anberlin's fans were not Christian, 30% were. Yeah. And they have, and a lot of people have just they've been so, there's been some negative comments but for the most part, people have been so nice. They've just been basically like, we support you and we love you, but honestly, we're not going to be listening to this record, but thanks for all you do. And I appreciate that honesty. I mean, some of them have been pretty brutal, but for the most part, I've been so excited, man. Just the anticipation and everybody's kind of getting involved has been and on board has been pretty awesome.
I feel like people need hope, and that's kind of what this record provides, hopefully.
Man, and let's if you don't have any other questions, I think we should end it like that as well. Yeah. As far as your first question, just bring it full circle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Like I said, Chester out there, I can say if this is a suicide, like most suicides, it's just because it feels hopeless. It just does. Life just at the end of the day feels hopeless. And for me, I believe that Jesus Christ gives us hope, and that's what's so incredible. And so I can continue because of my hope for a better tomorrow, because of what I believe in today.
Well, I thank you for all you do. I can tell you got some family fun going on. It's never a dull moment at the Christian household. So I will I'll let you enjoy your day. But thank you so much, Stephen.
Dude, thank you, James. I really appreciate it.
I
Thanks
can't
for your
wait.
time.
I hope I get to see it live soon.
I do too. You and me both.
All right, man. Have a great day.
All right, bye.